Just a quick preview. This is not intended to be a how-to on working on the transmission. This is the first time I've done one, first time I opened the case, not shy about that. It worked out great, but I did find a couple of things I wish I had known when I started, and that's kind of what I want to include in this video, just tips and techniques. As far as how-to, the manual is outstanding. The climber I found fantastic. Describes, even if you laid the parts out very carefully as you're taking them out, it describes where the shoulders go on the gears and everything. It's just reassuring when you're putting it back together to kind of make sure you get it right. So again, just tips that I found the first time. There is another video I made of a sort of diagram and animation of the or 3D model of the Norton transmission. I never found what I consider to be a good one. If you find one, great, let me know, put a note in the comments. It was helpful to me to visualize how everything was working and going together. You don't need any of that information to work on the transmission by any means. That's why I put it in a separate video, but it was helpful to me to kind of understand how all the particularly concentric pieces of the Norton transmission and its continuous mesh structure worked. So I hope you find that helpful, and thanks a lot. 1974 Norton Commando 850 Mark II with some overdue transmission work. It has a tick in second and third gear, roughly in tune with the wheel spin. So I'm hoping it's something to do with the layshaft gear and not an internal bearing. I'm gonna try to disassemble it in the frame. So I know, feel free to comment, but I know a lot of people take the whole thing out, and I may end up doing that anyway. But I'm really hoping that it's something to do with one of those gears and it's replaceable in the frame, just to save some work. I got the Steadfast tool for removing the clutch end assembly. And as I put it on, I realized two things. One, I don't have a socket big enough for the end of it, so I'm going to see what I can do with that. But I also noticed marks on the inner cover for where the clutch assembly goes on that I don't think are factory. So my hope is that somebody's already had this apart and possibly already replaced the internal bearings, which would be great, because I know there are some real problems with the internal bearing on the left-hand side. Sometimes those were Portuguese bearings that I know had problems because of the brass bent down ends. So we'll see what we find when we get in there. And again, I'm sure there'll be comments about trying to do this in the frame, but I thought it was worth a shot. So time will tell. Wow, that was not particularly tight at all, so that's great. I do have a feeling that this was disassembled at some other point. So like I say, hopefully that means that the bearings are not original and old. You know, the original owner, we can check. The ball bearing is still in there. I'll set that aside. So the bad news is these are in fact factory marks. They're actually cut into the circle. So that doesn't tell me anything about whether or not the bearings have been. So I had an old Whitworth Triumph end wrench spanner that I was able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the internal cover bolts or nuts off of. I've still got the 1, 2 of the tightest ones, and I gotta get the nut off of the bearing end of the primary. So I may need to get an impact wrench for that, but making progress. But there's a special place in hell for whoever decided that there was enough room in there to get those out of there. I have Cocoon thin-walled Whitworth sockets coming, hopefully tomorrow. So hopefully that will get those two out, and I'll put an impact on that, and we'll see what happens. Okay, making progress on removing the inner transmission case. The nut that is at the end of the shaft came off with an impact wrench, not a big deal. The nuts inside, this one particularly tight, did come off. I got a Koken thin-walled Whitworth socket, and that was able to take off the two that were the hardest because they're so tight in there. The rest of them came off with a regular Whitworth socket. I did have to grind a little bit off of one edge of the Koken socket to get the nut off, but it did work fine. So I highly recommend those Kokens. Great source of Whitworth thin-walled. If you order them, the thin-walled is not a different code. The ones on their website that are for SAE and metric that are thin-walled are under their Z class, but for Whitworth, there's only one set, and that set is relatively thin-walled. Like I say, I had to grind a tiny bit down to get that out, but it did come out. The tool for removing the piece that holds the clutch lever I got from Steadfast Cycles real quick. They were great, and that came right off, so no trouble there. So now I'm going to remove the nuts that I've loosened and see if I can get the inner cover off. We'll go from there. I don't know who would put a nut this close to the edge of the case. It's just crazy. And it's not like this is under high oil pressure or anything, so I don't know why you need quite so many nuts, but it's British. All right, that's all the Whitworth nuts. These are the Koken sockets, by the way, and there's just a little, just had to grind a tiny bit down in order to get that corner in, but it did work out just fine. So I've been told that the inner cover comes off easier if I get the spring-loaded plate, the thing that holds the gear plate in gear on the dents on the gear change plate out first. So I'm going to try and get that out. Looks like it's another Whitworth. So we'll see if I can get one of the new Whitworth sockets up in there. So that was a 7/16 Whitworth, because of course it was, but it did come loose. Thanks again to those Koken sockets. So hopefully now I can convince the inner cover to come off. Last time it took a mallet and just a gentle use of a puller. We're going to try that again and see what happens, just really gently, because I know I got to grab the inner shims and stuff if it comes out. So we will see. So certainly probably not the recommended method, but I put a bunch of the outer cover screws back in to the inner cover, and I'm using those with a hose clamp and very slow, gentle action with an impact tool to just slowly try and pry that back out. And it's coming. I've got a new drip of transmission fluid coming out of the center, so we're getting there. And I'm really being slow and gentle here and trying to just kind of ease it out one knock at a time. And it seems to be working. But again, I know, I'm sure I'm going to see comments about how I should have taken the whole thing off of the bike, or that there's a better way to do this. But it is sort of very gently easing that inner cover off. Like I say, just one gentle knock at a time. I'm watching the threads on the inner cover nuts and just making sure that it's easing off as I knock it out. I get a couple of threads and then I move over to another one and see if I can ease it off further. Take time, but it's working. And I'm you know, trying to be gentle and do this without doing any damage to anything. It seems okay so far. There it goes. Oh, there it goes. Yep. Come on off. So now I'll try and see if I can do it by hand and keep my thumbs on the shafts and try and make sure that they don't pop out of the inside bearings, because I understand that then the shims all go to hell and you can't figure out what went where. So we will try and avoid that too. But it's coming. Yeah, the plate's wiggling now. Inner cover's wiggling now, so. Just gonna keep easing that off. I'm just going like one thread at a time off of those and making sure I keep pressure on that inner. I don't want that coming off. Looks like it's working. I'm also going to try not to throw myself backwards when it finally comes off. Right, we're almost off the studs now. There it goes. And there goes the lay shaft, but it stayed in place, which is good. Or the main shaft. Main shaft and the layers staying where they belong. That's good. Soon we shall see. I'm really hoping it's that fork and that's easy to replace. There it goes. Ta-da! That bearing looks fine. Don't see any damage on the bearing there. Kickstart. Just gonna see if I can feel around in the teeth and see if I find a damage, anything blatant. So far, nothing. Oh, there goes the gear change. All right, we're gonna disassemble, I guess. Oh, I gotta check the shims. There were no shims on the inner that I can see. So nothing to worry about there. I just kind of pushed the bearings back in and make sure that, or the shafts back in, make sure that the bearings are seated still. Yeah, I don't see anything internal here. Just these guys holding in. Okay. Keep going. All right. just kind of taking the tension off of everything and looking one at a time. No damage to these. Everything looks all right there. All important second, which where I was hearing a tick. Shims look okay. Everything looks cool. So that fork shaft is turning really easily. I think it's threaded on the other end. I should check all that. Yeah, there it goes. And of course the fork falls inside. Kind of had to expect that, I guess. Okay. Here comes third gear on the fork. Third gear. No tooth damage at all, which is good. That looks shiny but normal, thinking. I don't get a tick there or anything. No tick there either, which I was kind of hoping for. That spins free. Fork looks all right. Oh well. Third gear doesn't want to come out. That's interesting. No tooth damage though. I'm going to get the light underneath it and just inspect the teeth on the remaining gears by turning the wheel. I don't really want to displace the shaft at this stage. Okay. Teeth look okay on the lower third. Oh, hello. Okay, I just ran my finger down through the well inside and there's your trouble. So now we just got to figure out where he came from. Well, there's your trouble. So there's the problem. The inner, I guess that's first gear, which seems funny because I didn't recognize a tick as much. Well, it's the layshaft, so I guess it's only when the drive force is on the layshaft, but the tooth has broken off on that inner gear. So that'll be fun. But better than the bearing, which I was really afraid of. So anyway, mystery solved, and onward we go. Okay, so I figured I'd spare you the challenging part, which I don't know, maybe you wanted to see it, but after removing the primary, you know, the gears off of the main shaft and the lay shaft had been driven into the bearing in the back, which is one of those Portuguese bearings, unfortunately. So I had to heat the case from the back with a heat gun to about 150 degrees, and once I did, the lay shaft came out with the two gears on it still, obviously, and there's our missing tooth. So the good news is I can replace this guy and get it back together without having removed the entire thing. And you know, a smarter person might go ahead and replace that bearing while you're here, because I know the Portuguese bearings are notorious, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I mean, I could heat it up even further and try and get the bearing out. I'll think about it, but at the moment I think I'm gonna settle for being satisfied that the problem was this broken tooth and that everything else is cool, and put her back together because it looks okay. I'm gonna clean it all out, spray everything down, get anything, you know, any of the gunk out. There wasn't a lot of residue because the tooth looks like it was a fairly clean break. So it's not like anything ran through those bearings, I don't think, but you know, again, everybody's welcome to disagree. You know, I could try heating that up to 200 or 300 with a blowtorch and see if I can get it out. But then, of course, I got to drive a new bearing into it, which I could do. I could freeze it and try and get it in. I'll think about it. I may talk to some people and send some notes out. But at the moment, success in having left the transmission on the bike and being able to get to the lay shaft, get the lay shaft off, and be able to identify the broken tooth and hopefully replace it and get everything back together again. You know, again, you're welcome to disagree, but that's what I think I'm gonna do. Okay, so on further reflection, cooler heads have prevailed. I inspected the bearing, and not only was it a Portuguese bearing, but it has it's wearing on the outer race. If you run your finger around it, it stops, you know, it pauses kind of as you go around instead of smoothly moving. You can feel kind of bump, 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 which clearly there's grooves starting on the outer race and the bearing needs to be replaced. So I have continued to try to get it out inside of the bike. I heated it up to about 250 degrees and it just let go and popped out. Ouch, still hot. That bearing is now out. I have ordered the new one. We'll switch to a roller bearing, or a roller bearing, which is what everybody seems to recommend. You know, and you could feel when you went around with it, still hot, that it was going, you know, that the balls have started to make wear marks on the outer race, and it was only a matter of time before that bearing failed. So since we went this far, I am going to go ahead and replace the 29-pound or, you know, $35 bearing. So that's the plan. I apologize for not recording more of it, but there really wasn't that much to see. With a bearing puller, I got the old bearing out. There's a notch behind it that allows you to get the bearing puller in behind it to be able to knock it out. I froze the new roller bearing, heated it up to 250 degrees, the case, with a heat gun, and then it popped right in there. I did pound it with something bigger than the bearing to just get it in even. It went in almost even with the surface. It stuck out a little tiny bit, but the old one did too, so I think that's okay. The biggest issue I had, I drove the end onto the layshaft for the new bearing, and that whole system where that insert goes into the new roller bearing on the end of the layshaft doesn't hold the layshaft, which means that as you're easing the cover on, you get all the forks in the right place. You put it shifted into neutral, get all the forks and gears in the right place, which was really straight out of the manual. There was really nothing worth watching there. The only tricky part was getting the main fork into the back inner run on the cam plate, but once you get it in there, I was holding it up with something, just kind of with one hand while I got the other layshaft fork into the cam plate, and that went fine. Somebody else had said too that make absolutely sure you pop this guy into the shifter before you put the plate on, because you can't get it on afterwards. So I did that first time. I put it on right. The only issue though, again, that layshaft, because it comes out, if you have any trouble getting the inner cover on and you have to pull it back out again, the layshaft comes with you, and you then have to kind of try to make sure that the layshaft goes back and gets seated in the bearing, which seems really hinky, but it works. I didn't have to take everything out again to make sure it was seated, because as long as it's seated in there, you're okay. I did make sure I had it shifted in first. I kind of was trying to ease things in. I put it into neutral as the manual suggests, just to follow that. And it did go in. I had a little problem lining up. I had to kind of hold the main shaft right to get it to come through its bearing. But everything seems fine. Again, went together easy. The only thing is that if it doesn't go on that first try and you're using that roller bearing, you kind of have to get in and hold first gear in the layshaft as you're pulling it out. But either way, the layshaft's going to come with you. So you just have to make really sure that layshaft is in there the very last time you get everything in. So anyway, that's where we are. So now I'm at the point where I'm going to torque the 7 nuts that hold in the inner cover. The spring went on without any trouble. That's easy. Then I got to get the nut on here, so I'll bind the rear wheel, put it in 4th gear, and then torque that nut on to the end of the bearing, and we should be in good shape. So, going back together fine. I guess that's the only thing, like I say, worth saying was watch that layshaft as you're kind of trying to finagle the inner cover on. Okay, so again, I got my Koken slightly ground long socket for putting these nuts in. I've set the torque wrench to 12 foot-pounds as the manual recommends, and I'm going to follow the star pattern that it tells you. So we're going to start with this guy. I'm going to go like halfway all the way around, I guess, and then come around again. That's 1, 2, 3. That's the right tightness. The second one fits on my head. I had it shaved. 4 is up here. 5 is this one. I'm just going 6 foot-pounds the first time. And 7. Seems a little funny, isn't it? Or we do 6 and 7 after the hours. That's what the manual says. That's what we're going to do. So just move the door to 7 to fit. 6. Alright, so now we're up to 12. That's 1, right? 2. 3. 4. 5. Oh, this way, because we're going to 6 at one time. That's 5. This is 6. I'm just glad I spared you all the gear stuff. All right, well, we're on. play in the layshaft than I like, but not too bad. That's the one thing I was worried about. You know, again, it's crazy with that new bearing because of the way it sits in the back. I don't know if there's much you can do about it. I'll do a little reading. But. All right, so outer or inner cover on. Now we move to the inner cover installation. Not so fast, obviously. So we're still on the inner installation because I got to do. I thought that the rest of this was on the next, on the other chapter in the manual, but it's not. It's on the inner cover installation, so we're going to go with that. So I got to shift in a 4th gear, and then lock up the rear and put that nut on at 70 foot-pounds, which should be exciting. There's 2nd. There, that should be 3rd, and that should be 4th. There it goes. Don't scare me like that. All right, so that's 4th. I was afraid for a minute I had an extra neutral and there was something wrong inside, but that should be 4th. So we'll bind up the rear wheel now and then torque. I got the wheel bound up, and the digital torque wrench didn't go. It only went to 59 foot-pounds, so we're going old school with the classic torque wrench, and we'll see if we get to 70 this way before something gives. Wow. Yep. All right. All right, unbound the wheel. We'll go back to neutral. Third. Probably 4th. So. 3rd. 2nd. Neutral. All right, I guess that's good news. It seems fine. I guess the only thing, other thing worth mentioning, while I had it all apart, I certainly cleaned everything, really just with a rag and more oil, because that would seem like what was recommended. It didn't sound like a good idea to put anything in the ultrasonic, so I just kind of brushed everything off and cleaned everything. I put a little bit of fresh 80/90 as I was putting it back together again, so things seem to be moving okay. Looking forward to getting it all back together and seeing how it goes through the gears. So, all right, next is the shifting setup. So the ball and the ring, rods in there. I assume we're factory for the alignment of the lever when we get there. I'll spare you all of this. I'm cheating a little bit. So I got that in fine. It lines up great with the marks. Of course, my clutch is still under tension, so the wheel went in fine. I got it, managed to convince it a little bit to the point where I can get the screw through. So now I'm just kind of, like I say, I know I'm cheating, but I'm just driving that screw through the pointer rotation of the lever arm, and that should be fine. Tighten that guy up. I think I did any real damage to the threads because it was, once it got set, it was lined up all right. So that looks all right. Making progress. I was a little nervous that the fact that the clutch was still, because of course it's still on the bike and I didn't release the clutch on the other side. I was afraid that was going to make getting that back in there. It came apart easy enough, but I was afraid getting it back in might have been a challenge. I don't find a torque spec either on either the retaining ring around this guy or this nut, so we're just gonna be gentle and not strip it. It's not going anywhere with the clutch lever pulled there and everything. I don't think anything's gonna release. So just doing the kind of whatever I think is reasonable. All right, getting there. Install the ratchet plate in the cover. All right, can do that. Oh, I got the ratchet. I have ratchet plate. I got the gasket kit from Andover Norton, and it came with all the replacement O-rings and stuff, which is really nice. So everything's getting freshened up that way. So I replaced all the, I didn't, obviously I'm not replacing the main seal on the other side because I didn't take the clutch off and I didn't remove the primary sprocket or take the main shaft out. That stuff all seemed fine. I didn't replace the main shaft bearing either because it looked perfectly fine, and it's a race, it's a special ball bearing set that's got like a divot on one side and a raised area on the other to keep it in track, and nobody seemed to think that was an issue. So I just upgraded to a roller bearing in the back of the layshaft, but I left the main together. So but again, the Andover Norton stuff was fantastic. Came to the States in I ordered it on a Thursday. Once I knew that gear was missing a tooth, I ordered the gasket set and seal set, the gear for fourth gear off the lay, and the roller bearing, and they came. I ordered it on I think a Thursday, and it was here on Monday. So all good. So I'm using a little gasket cement. I'm not a big fan of that stuff because the second you open the tube, it's on everything. But anyway, looks like it went in all right. We're a little worried about that pawl inside. I've got a bore camera. I might pop it in there and just see if I can tell if it's right. If that pawl is sitting right inside. I think it is. It feels like it is. But I think I'm gonna pop a bore camera in there and take a look. But I think that went all right. I guess I could just put the screws in loose and try and run through the shifting. Maybe I'll do that. All right, there's no fluid in it left yet, but the outer cover's back on. I gotta get all the gasket seal off. I put the shift lever on. I haven't connected the clutch yet, but just wanted to go through the gears, make sure that that pawl is in place, and see whether we got everything operating at least at this level the way it should. So it was in neutral first. Nice. So the paw's working. Back to neutral. Yep. Second. Third. Yep. Fourth. Yep. So not to celebrate too early, but second. Neutral. Oh, went all the way to first. Neutral. Yep. It looks like it's functioning. Everything's, so the paw's clear, shifter's working. I'll connect the clutch, finish up the inner cover or outer cover installation instructions, clean everything up, and maybe I'm gonna look and see if there's another way to kind of test going through the gears and stuff without getting too carried away, because I just want to make sure that's all right in there. But anyway, we'll do fluid, Since it looks like everything's tight, I'll tighten up those screws since the Paul's working, and we'll go from there. But looking good so far.